love those beautiful songs as we remember just the amazement of Pentecost Sunday.
Scusi Signore, e tutte o Israele nostro Dio e Signore. Grazie.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Meine Damen, höre Israel, der Herr ist unser Gott, der Ewige ist einzig. Dankeschön.
I'm still not quite getting that.
Signora, escuche Israel, el Señor nostro Dios, Jehová, uno es, Signora. Grazie.
I just don't understand.
Well, considering you know that this is Pentecost Sunday, it does sound kind of strange that we hear these foreign languages on a day like today. But the foreign language expresses one thing and one thing only. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. No matter what language we say, then that is the truth.
I love Pentecost Sunday. I didn't get a chance to ask Carol ahead of time if it was okay to share the story, but last week she was telling me that growing up, and I told her this is true and here at this church as well, that, we didn't really think about Pentecost Sunday. Christmas, Easter, yes, but Pentecost. And she said, and one time that Charles Woodall was here and she or the ladies had something they wanted to do on this Sunday, and he's like, that's Pentecost Sunday. And she said, can't we just move Pentecost? I have to tell you that at Graceland, I used to be accused of making Pentecost up because they all knew that red was my favorite color. And they said, we know you just made this up so that we'd all have to wear red on this Sunday. And Pentecost is one of those Sundays that we really didn't hear that much about growing up. It still really hasn't caught the attention of the commercialism that we have, that we gather around Christmas and Easter. You always hear people saying, Easter, all they want to talk about is bunny rabbits and chocolate. And Christmas, they want to talk about Santa Claus. Remember, it's about Jesus. And you wonder, I'm thinking, boy, just think of what the marketing people could do with Pentecost if they would just get a hold of it. Can you imagine? Not only would we have balloons and banners and red flowers, everybody would have them decorating their house. Imagine how much you could sell. And we could all have like Velcro tongues of fire that would stick to our shoulders. And we could have caps that had like the dove coming down on the top of them. And t-shirts. I actually do have a Pentecost t-shirt. I refrained from wearing it that one of my former church members made for me it was a red t-shirt that has flames of fire coming up all over it. We could all have those. We could have t-shirts with all the different languages written all over proclaiming the greatness of God. It's amazing to me sometimes that the marketing people have not gotten a hold of Pentecost. Maybe it's because, like this little girl who was told the story of Pentecost, turned to her mother and said, I must have missed that Sunday. Maybe it's because the church doesn't act like we have that power of God available to us. Like Annie Dillard, the author, who says, I don't understand why everybody doesn't come to church wearing crash helmets if we really thought about the power of God that we are proclaiming on Sunday morning. I wonder what it is that keeps us from realizing the power and the wonder and glory of Pentecost. Because unlike Poplar Plaza last night, that if you happened to drive by and it looked like a ghost town, our power source is not down. Our power source is alive and well. God is a living God. God's power is still present. God's power is available to us. Pentecost Sunday morning. Maybe it's like my landlord says. Every month I get a text message from my landlord saying, "Have you been changing the air filters?" Every month I say, "Yes, I'm changing the air filters." And he writes me back and he says, "Oh, that's good." He goes, "Because it's so important to change the air filters." He said, that helps the air to flow. It helps the system to work. Maybe that is our problem with Pentecost. Maybe we haven't been changing out our air filters enough and they are getting clogged up. The word for spirit in both Greek and Hebrew is the same word that is used for wind, for air, for spirit. Maybe we need to unclog our church air filters. Change them out so that the air, the Spirit of God, can blow freely through the church, and the church will be energized and enthused and on fire for Jesus Christ. Maybe we need to change the air filters because we've gotten them to where they are clogged up and we are holding back the Spirit of God. What does it look like when we hold back the Spirit of God? Or how are we doing this? What could be clogging it? Maybe it is the spirit of negativity. Have you ever been to church when all you hear are people complaining? I'm not saying that happens in this congregation, but I've been in a lot of different congregations, and I have definitely been in some where all you hear about is everything that is wrong with the church, everything that is wrong with the preacher, everything that is wrong with the chair of the board and the elders and the deacons, and this person did this and this person did that, and you want to say, okay, there's not any air flowing through this church. That spirit of negativity can clog up the filter to allow Christ's presence and the Spirit of God. Or maybe it is because we let the air filter of the Spirit of God get clogged up by our own expectations, by us telling God what we want, by putting God in a box. You know, like we say, I had a student on one of my online classes, and she was writing an answer to some question, and she said, "Well, I know there's people that are going to disagree with me, but I have the truth." And the paragraph before that, she had just said how she was open to everyone's opinion. And I wrote her back and said, "These two paragraphs don't seem to go together to me. You say you're open to everybody's opinion, but then you say that, people are, that you have the truth and others don't, and people aren't going to like this," or something that was very unclear. And so she wrote me back and she told me exactly what she thought about how Christians were supposed to live and what Christianity was about. And she told me all these other ways that she was judging that could not be a part of Christianity. Maybe it is because we only want it to look like we want it to look, that we clog the Spirit from being able to flow through. Or maybe it's because of our own expectations, our own ways of telling God what we want. Last week, a couple of people said something about me preaching to them, and I said I was preaching to me. Well, I'm preaching to me right now, just so you know. Because I know I do this. I've been telling God, what I want. I'm like, God, these last few years, I've gone through all this work to start the teaching, and I've gone to all this work to reactivate the law license, and I'm actually finally starting to feel okay about that a little bit. But I also still feel this call to ministry, and you want me to leave Memphis? You want me to leave my family? You want me to leave all of this to go and to be able to be a preacher in a church again? Is this what you God. And when I set those limits, when I'm telling God how it's got to be, I know I'm not letting the Spirit flow through. There are so many ways, so many things that we can do to let the filters of our lives, our busyness, our negativity, our own expectations, all of those things can be blocking the power of God's Spirit through us and through our congregations. Maybe we need to clean out or change out our air filters so that the Spirit of God can come flowing through us in a way that the world can understand, as the people did on that first day of Pentecost. But then I thought maybe the reason that the marketing people, the commercialism hasn't hit Pentecost Sunday, maybe because most of the time the Spirit doesn't always move in those big, powerful, dramatic ways. Maybe it is like our air conditioning system when it is working correctly, when we don't even notice it, really, when it's working. It blows so smoothly. It's not like great big gusts of wind that knock us, down. Maybe it's because so often the way the Spirit moves in a church is more like that still, small voice, that whisper. That whisper where God's love takes a little 8-year-old boy who's only known violence in his life and introduces him to someone like maybe Rachel Coates, Greer, or some loving person in the church who offers him hope and love. Maybe it's because the Spirit of God often moves in those quiet ways where these church people gather and work real hard to put together a sale so that they can raise money for these homeless families. Maybe it's because God's Spirit often works within us in such quiet ways that we barely even notice that God is working a powerful act within us, transforming us and raising us into the stature of Christ. Maybe that is because the church so often goes about its business without proclaiming all of the wonderful acts of love that touches lives that many times we don't even know about. And many times, sometimes people were rejected all of their life until something happens when all of a sudden they are grieving, and then they begin to hear the words of that Sunday school teacher that many years ago, reminding them that our God is an awesome God, or our God is there in times of trouble, and they remember that Christ is their strength. As a preacher, a pastor, I like it big. I love Pentecost Sunday. I